Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm in studio today with grid engineer Mike Herzog. How's it going, Mike?
Doing great, David. Glad to be here.
Oh, Mike, we got some fun stuff to talk about today. This one's really quite on the humorous channel. It's about how you can charge faster at a Tesla supercharger. This this one is kind of cringy. It's really kind of out there, but you can put a wet towel on a Tesla supercharger handle to get faster charging speeds. It literally shows somebody with his Cybertruck with a cloth on the handle pouring water on the damn thing. Now, I'm curious how you unplug when you're done. I mean, I'm just like, this just seems crazy. I'm really curious how somebody figured this out too.
I wonder if that's covered under the warranty. What were you doing while I poured water on the charger? Because the internet told me to.
Well, I was the executioner at the local prison, and I got this Tesla, and this is what we do to the prisoners. We
Yeah,
pour some water on their heads, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is. I mean, how did they figure this out?
it's
Uh,
well. I will say for years I worked at the utility and used to go out and give the safety talk to kindergartners and preschoolers. And this was one of the bullet points: don't unplug things if your hands are wet, if your hair is wet, dry off. If it's wet, don't touch it. It just seems pretty counter to all of that.
this is going to be the new news. So currently, everybody's always telling me how much your EVs are exploding and catching on fire, right? Yeah, I mean, I see this all the time that EVs are exploding. It is a top thing that people search for
Mhm.
on YouTube is electric vehicles exploding, and they don't. Okay, so people are really disappointed in that. But the next thing is somebody's going to get electrocuted.
Oh, 100%. Well, I shouldn't. I mean, yes, somebody's going to get hurt doing that. No, so my engineering brain goes to what's actually happening here, and I'm guessing it's just cooling. That there's some type of sensor involved in that handle, and the wire, anything like that. You're basically have a switch there where if it gets hot, throttle the
Mhm.
amount of electrons going through. Then what this is
Got
saying,
it.
I'm going to cool off the sensor so I can pump more electrons through and increase the heating. So outside of just pouring water on it, hopefully it's not bypassing a safety sensor in there as well that's saying, yeah, you shouldn't charge it this fast. You're going to have a problem.
So
I love
it's
the
saying
internet.
it's
That's
yeah,
what
I know. Everybody who knows EVs knows that extreme temperatures and high charging speeds don't mix well. Tesla owners discovered they can trick the system on hot, sunny days to get a little extra juice from a supercharger in a few minutes. And anyways, the wet towel trick has circulated in Tesla forums and other online communities for a few years now. But with summer coming in hot, thought it'd be a good idea to make this little do-it-yourself solution more widely known. this, this isn't going to end well. Um, as its name suggests, it implies putting a wet piece of cloth over the charging cable on a hot day when the sun shines directly on the handle, making its temperature rise. Okay, well, you could even just say, even if you didn't pour water on it, wrapping it up probably would
probably
keep it
helps.
cooler just from not
I mean,
having
you can
direct sunlight.
sit there and fan it with your hands. You can put a little umbrella on it. Yeah,
Rub an ice cube on it.
yeah, really, yeah, really get those extra amps out of it.
By putting a wet towel over the handle, it's shielded from the sun's light, can stay at a lower temperature, that thus facilitating a higher charging rate. One Tesla owner documented putting a damp cloth over the charging handle convinced the V2 supercharger to up the rate from 60 kilowatts to 95 kilowatts during a hot day. That's wow, a more than 50% increase in charging speed. They plugged it in at a 2% state of charge, and the supercharger quickly ramped up to 147. Then it thermal throttled to 58 when the state of charge reached 34%. Putting a wet rag at room temperature over the cable handle convinced the stall to ramp back up to 119. Those are big differences.
It's big differences, but I still go back to you're bypassing a safety feature. I'm trying to think of a good analog to it, but it's like taking the governor off your golf cart. It's there for a reason. You don't want to go super fast, but
Oh, So on the newer version 3 stalls, this trick won't help at all on almost all of Tesla's EVs except the Cybertruck. The Angular pickup is the company's first passenger vehicle to feature an 800-volt battery setup. The others have a 400-volt, but all the supercharger stations are currently on in the United States aren't capable of dispensing at 800 volts. As a result, the electric pickup splits the battery pack into two 400-volt subunits, making the superchargers ramp up the electrical current rate to over 700 amps. This can make even the actively cooled V3 handle get hot, which is why the wet towel trick only works for Cybertruck owners who go to version 3 stalls to top up their batteries. Man, we don't see any pictures of anybody holding the handle. I'm just looking for this. I'm waiting for that picture of somebody. Wow. Well, it's just fascinating. This doesn't seem like a. It just seems like something could go horribly wrong.
I think we can call it for today. We're not going to do better than that. That's
no.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So my next topic is how 1.5 million new electric vehicles in Massachusetts will affect the power grid through 2033. Now, this article obviously this comes from MassachusettsLive.com. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, more than 1.5 million new EVs and a doubling of solar production and a 14-fold increase in electricity demand is expected in the next 9 years.
Wow.
So, or the next decade. Now, part of the thing, we've talked about this before, people always think that its electric vehicles are going to be taxing the grid and its computing power. I mean, you've got places like MIT and Harvard and all these other places in Massachusetts, and I'm sure you have plenty of data centers, and data centers are using far more electricity than EVs do. And you can easily offset your EVs with a few solar panels, right? You don't even need a whole house worth of solar panels. You can just have a few.
EVs are shiftable, and that's my perspective from the grid side on it. That's what we've always tried to do with them and approach it. It's shiftable. You don't need to charge it 24 hours a day. You'll need a couple hours of charge. Whereas a data center, like it's in the background all the time.
Oh, and if they're mining or they're doing AI, it really is.
It's
sucking the juice.
So the title of that was right? So they're saying a whole bunch of new EVs, a whole bunch of solar, and a 14% increase on top of all of that.
So there's unprecedented changes going on to the power system in New England, according to a lead data scientist from New England's load forecasting system. This presents a lot of challenges, but it's also an extremely rewarding in that we get to and have to be pioneers of the mechanisms by which to deal with some of these issues going forward. We've talked a lot about what's going on. The New England is expected to increase from 119. Through 2033, they're expected to increase from 119,000 gigawatt hours to 140,000 gigawatt hours. Wow. Doesn't really seem like a big. I mean, that is an increase. But that's not kind of what it made it sound like. Sometimes I'm always wondering if when it's saying 2033, if they meant in the next year. Oh, they're expecting participation in the region's wholesale electricity markets will reduce electricity use by 11,000 gigawatt hours by 2033. So I guess they're trying to do things to get people to use more solar and renewables. And, we've talked a little bit before about the hot water heater that is a heat pump, or hot water heater that you can reduce your energy usage in your house. If you have an electric hot water heater and you switch to a heat pump hot water heater, it's about the same amount that an EV typically uses in a year, and so you can offset that.
Yeah. The other big thing that they're going to play into, it's federal legislation that's passed recently. It's a couple of years now, but it's called FERC Order 2222, which opens up the aggregation of multiple smaller solar facilities to participate in markets. So referring to that, where you could get everybody in a neighborhood to put solar panels on their house aggregate that in a package and say, we're going to participate in the wholesale market and try to make some money off of it, not just whatever the utility is going to give me for it. It's you can participate in the market, which you're banking on, some of those days in Texas or other parts of the country where power's selling for like $50,000, or $5,000, where you just made your HOA fees for the entire year, or your maintenance fees if you're a commercial building, whatever it is, by participating in the market. So from our standpoint on the grid side, it's completely changing that around, where it makes it potentially a lot more lucrative for people to participate, because they can play the market. They can cash in on the market, not just that flat level avoided cost that the utility is going to offer them.
Well, solar keeps getting cheaper. It should be like $1 a kilowatt hour or something like that, is the current cost for the installers, or for the solar company when they buy and they install it. This is getting super cheap, because we've been talking about solar farms. Solar farms cost roughly $1 million per megawatt to install, and that's typically a 5-acre solar farm. And it's interesting to see where that plays out. But if you are buying solar, you're lucky if you can get it for less than $4.50 a kilowatt for your house. So it really,
it's a big difference.
Or is it per watt? No, it's per watt, not. Yeah, I get my math and abbreviations. So, Mike's the smart one on the show.
You know what? I was going to jump in on one of those previous ones. We were talking gigawatts and megawatts, and I was like, I'm going to miss that by a factor of 1,000, and I'm never going to hear the end of it. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
There's plenty of listeners who will correct me in the comments later on. So, anyways, and we'll see where that goes. So, Babcock Ranch is recognized as the first solar town in America as it prioritizes sustainability, renewable energy. It's 17,000 acre stretch of land in Southwest Florida, conveniently north of Fort Myers. Well, and it depends on how much solar you've got there, but I remember just a few years ago, it was taking 7 acres of solar to produce a megawatt, and now it's down to 5. And solar keeps improving. Now I'm seeing this stuff about nano coatings that can improve solar by another 20%. And, the panels just keep getting to be more and more efficient. So my next topic is from The Hill. And this is: the energy shift is the economic race of the century. What will the U.S. do to win? Now, a lot of people don't realize that we currently about 60% of energy use in the United States comes from fossil fuels still for our electricity. We've got about 40% from a combination of wind, solar, hydroelectric, and nuclear. And nuclear, for some reason, keeps being less popular.
It's hanging out in the background still, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I never worked at the nuclear power plant, but I have experience with nuclear power plants, and it's not a bad deal from what we're trying to do and trying to look at. And, if you build it to 2024 standards and go forward, it's safe, it's efficient, it's there all the time. It's renewable. I know that people might argue with that piece, but to me, it falls in that same bucket with everything.
Right. Well, the thing is, I think that TV series Chernobyl was released to get people to stop talking about,
maybe,
that, and to realize that was in the 1980 or 79 or 80 or something like that. And that was in the Soviet Union. And, those people didn't seem quite as sharp as Homer Simpson. And, so that, it wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good look. But anyways, in this energy race, Biden is celebrating industrial and technological renaissance with 15 million new jobs and 650 billion of private sector investment. I don't know where this 15 million new jobs came from, but anyways, This is Xi Jinping saying that China must win the battle for key core technologies, a new era of technological revolution and industrial transformation. Now, the U.S., saying it's embraced a low carbon transition in earnest. You and I both know, even as much as we may want, cleaner energy and all that, a lot of what goes on is just pure economics. So once solar and wind are in place, they're very, there's not much. The energy is basically, it's the cost of transmission. It's just the cost of transmission at that point. And so it really, it gets to be a weird argument, because we know that here in Nebraska, the nuclear power plant can't function as cheap as renewables. And it just seems, like an odd piece. And I'm not anti-nuclear. I'm actually pro-nuclear. It's just, it's cheaper than other sources of power. It's cheaper but we have, what do we use? Light natural gas here to supplement the renewables.
All the new facilities being built are either renewable, solar, wind, or natural gas. That's what they're going for.
Yeah. But anyways, in this topic here on, the energy race, 80% of global production chain for solar panels comes from China. China controls 60% of the critical minerals, including cobalt, lithium, and rare earth, vital for each tech industry, EVs, and clean energy. The Inflation Reduction Act shows America is serious about economic competitiveness and understands the consequences of depending on supply chains controlled by economic rivals. A lot of the stuff, at least when it comes to the EVs, we know we can make the sodium-ion batteries here. We have lithium in the United States. It could all be manufactured. A lot of it is at what cost? Can we make it cheap enough and efficiently enough? Can we? And this is one of the things. I mean, they're making EVs so cheap in China that we know American companies can't compete with that. And so the United States is definitely going to lose the race on keeping the big three automakers selling in the rest of the world.
Well, that's past, right? I mean, it's unless something changes, like start today, sharpen your pencils, get a $10,000 car out there.
Yeah. It's going to be tough to compete.
Happen.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me that they did a search for like BYD on fire, and they sent me a list of like all the Google images for BYDs on fire. So I replied with a link to Ford's on fire.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, look, we can all find pictures of cars on fire. What's interesting, I found pictures. I tried to do a search for Teslas on fire, and one of the ones I found, it was clear somebody poured gasoline on the roof and set it on fire. It clearly wasn't a battery fire, because it was only on top of the vehicle was their fire. There was no fire on the rest of it. And I had somebody tell me, well, look up the Cybertruck on fire. And it was all from like GTA 5 or something like that. It was from video games.
Like clearly computer.
Right. Yeah. But anyways,
your comment about economic decisions and being the driver behind that. I mean, that's so true. In my experience, once you have your public facing statement that as an organization or business that says, we believe, in green, and we're going to do all of this, and we have these climate resilience plans and action plans, we're going to do that, then they close the door and say, we believe in green. That's what our priority is. And as long as all of these other things fit within that framework, we'll move forward with it. But it's still, you have to have that underpinning of financial and economic viability. Otherwise, these are non-starters.
Well, getting back to our topic, one of the things, there's a lot of opposition to the Inflation Reduction Act, which is such a crappy name because it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But
truly, right?
Right. It absolutely has nothing to do with it reducing inflation. Okay. But they can't call it the Green Jobs Act or something like that, because that's been tried before and it ended up being a scam. And, I was telling Bill yesterday, one of the problems you got is that Solyndra was clearly a boondoggle for some special interests to make
Yep.
some people rich. And if there was corruption ever that was really obvious in our government, Solyndra was probably it. I mean, Harry Reid's kid was a big part of that, and he was the leader of the Senate. And I don't know, that was just a whole bad thing, and it just didn't go down well. So now anything that comes up as green that the Democrats introduced, the Republicans just assume it's a scam. And it's kind of well founded because they have a bad taste in their mouth for it. But anyways, the United States has to catch up, and in some of these areas, I think we're going to naturally. We have so much solar and wind projects going on in the United States. I don't think there's any fear of us falling behind in renewables and our thing with battery farms. I think we're going to be good, but it's a matter of, are we going to keep up in the auto manufacturing space?
Yeah.
And I just don't have a good gut feeling about that the U.S. can continue to compete. I've got this article about a Texas-based solid-state EV battery startup. It lays out oil-killing plans. This is coming from Clean Technica. And so there's lots of stuff always going on in Texas. Okay. And Texas is a very manufacturing-friendly state. They don't have state income taxes. There's a lot of reasons why people would want to be based there. But they're showcasing this company is called Solidion, like solid ion technology. So I may be saying it wrong. Could be, but solid ion is one word, or it could be Solidion, or it could be solid ion technology, which is showcasing a new solid state EV battery platform with a green graphite anode sourced from biomass.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of different.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah. So there's two intertwined challenges lie between a solid state EV battery and the open road, space and time. By space, they mean that space is a valuable commodity in the electric vehicle, but a conventional lithium-ion EV battery requires hundreds of housings and connectors, adding bulk. Those connectors also add to the time and expense of manufacturing. Solidion described its solid-state EV battery architecture as a process of layering and connecting bipolar electrodes and solid electrolyte layers in series and in parallel. The result is a new platform called BEEP, BEEP, short for bipolar electrode to pack. I don't know if I'd want anything in my company to be called bipolar, but yes.
Not public facing. For the internal scientists, yes, go ahead. But public facing, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. So replacing individually housed EV battery cells within a single integrated module is a radical departure from conventional. Let's see. Now, the Solidion is a branch of Ohio-based energy storage technology firm Global Graphene Group, which has been flying under the radar. Global Graphene Group was recognized by LexisNexis as a top 100 global technology innovator along Samsung, LG, and Kettle. All three are familiar faces on the pages of Clean Technica, so G3 is a good company. Let's see. Oh, G3 has more than 700 issued patents and applications under its belt around the world. Well, I still, a lot of the times though, when I read about these new technologies in the solid states field, I'm not so sure what we've got. So Solidion lists silicon-rich, all solid-state lithium-ion cells, anode-less lithium metal cells, and lithium sulfur cells as a series of three technologies it plans to introduce alongside two kinds of solid electrolytes. One is composed of a polymer, and the other is composed of a polymer inorganic composite. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. There's so many of these battery companies, and I'm sure plenty of them have great tech, but it's a matter of, will they financially be able to bring it to market? That's always the case. It's like, it's great, you can have the best idea in the world, but can you execute and can you get it to market?
I don't know if I've shared this on here before, but 10 years ago, way back when, battery development, we were interested in, and we were looking, and what does this look like? Found a beautiful polished website, all the articles being cited. We're a top company, we have this breakthrough, we're ready to commercialize. We were to the point of like, I think these people have it together. We're going to go visit you where you're at out in New Jersey. We want to see your facilities. We want to go. It was some dude in a garage with science experiments. And yeah, the front half of the office was business professionals, and here's our glossy, this is the future. And then you go and here's our research, and Chuck in the back was sitting there, with his feet up, going like, well, I'm just watching these to see what they do. And it's like, oh, where's your commercial? Oh, we're not ready for that yet. I'm just doing science experiments. And since then I've been completely, anytime I see these, like, that's all I think of, Chuck in the garage. Like,
Oh yeah, I get it.
Commercialization. I don't know if Chuck agrees with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I had something similar years ago where I had somebody go to Australia to meet with somebody I was trying to do $1 million deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was living in a shack somewhere, and it just didn't seem like a real valid deal. Later on, I found out it was. It was a deal he was trying to broker some product from IBM Australia, and it just didn't seem like he had that bandwidth. And later on, I talked to somebody at IBM Australia, and they told me they knew who he was, and yeah, it had been legit. But we actually sent somebody, and it just didn't look right.
I'm sorry, this isn't.
Yeah, so appearances do matter,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you just never know what you're going to get there. All right, so our last article for today is global. Now, this is coming from a website called edie.net. And the report is global electricity emissions set to decline this year due to solar and wind boom. Now, let's see, 30% of the world's electricity generation in 2023 was renewable. A further 10% was nuclear. So that's about the same as the U.S. isn't quite the same ratio. The U.S. is like 22% renewable, 18% nuclear, and then 60 is like 20% coal, and then 40% light natural gas is about where the U.S. sits. So it's very similar. One of the things, though, is there's a few countries that are almost 100% hydroelectric.
Yeah.
I mean, people always forget about hydroelectric when they think about the mix. I mean,
well, it's like the U.S., the Pacific Northwest. It's all hydro. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's dirt cheap up there, and they've had it, and it's been that way for a long time. They've had that set up.
Yeah, when the U.S. government had to hide Megatron in the Hoover Dam, they added a whole bunch of hydroelectric in the Hoover Dam to power up Las Vegas, and that's worked out. Although that may be coming from the Megatron core. Anyways, I one time had a conversation with an executive at Bechtel. Bechtel built the Hoover Dam, and so I asked them, what was it like hiding Megatron in the Hoover Dam?
Hiding it in there.
But
I hope he appreciated that. He or she appreciated
that. Can wind turbine blades be recycled? I don't know. I would assume so, but I don't know what they're made of. I'm sure it's a pain to get them there.
Kind of a thorny subject, where there's different views. Yeah, where that is. I know state legislation here where we're at is a big topic about what do you do with them and landfills, and that's one of the avenues they've had to help stifle renewable development. Is like these just end up in landfills after the fact.
They are.
We also say, like, as bad as it is to say, everything ends up in a landfill. I don't know why you would think the parts from a natural gas facility wouldn't end up in a landfill somewhere too, but that's a tough one. It's varying opinions on that one out there.
No, it's interesting to see some of the opinions on, what goes on. And to make an EV, you need to do this. And like, what if we're building a, oil wells or oil refinery? Is that not polluting? Is that not, does that not have some harmful effect too? I'm just like, what is cleaner and what's not? But let me see. So there was tracked a 23% increase in solar electricity generation year on year for 2023. That's a big jump, 23% in 1 year. More than twice as much new electricity generation was provided during the year by solar than coal. largely due to a surge in installations in the second half of the year. 10% year-on-year increase in wind generation. And a lot of that, you have to realize that a lot of the money available to fund these green energy projects, it's hard to do because the interest rates are so high that it doesn't, the math just doesn't work.
Yeah.
The interest cost on putting in wind is more than what they could produce.
It's
the energy from something else.
It's like there's no point where these are going to cross over. It's just too high.
Yeah. And let's see. There was a 0.8% increase in fossil fuel generation also in 2023. And so we did have a slight increase in fossil fuel usage, but at the same time had a massive increase, 10% increase in wind. Now, the one thing is the fossil fuel was a larger number, so 0.8 might have represented a bigger
number. Yeah.
Yeah. So, statistics get manipulated. We're not going to lie here. Okay. I don't like to be biased in any of these conversations. I mean, I like seeing the cleaner stuff, but on the flip side, I understand both sides' arguments, on the good and the bad. And, it takes a lot to make some of these projects work. We just know in the long run, it's better off for everybody if we make the conversion to clean energy. It's just how quick is reasonable, and where does it go? I don't see oil drilling's not going to stop. Clean energy in terms of wind and solar, it's going to cut down on coal. It's going to cut down on light natural gas. It's just like EVs. EVs are going to cut down on the usage of fossil fuels for driving cars, but it's not going to be eliminated for.
No, and that's the challenge with all of it. It's none of this can happen overnight. I know that's a cliche, and overnight is still none of this is going to happen in a decade or be complete in that standpoint. It was during the Obama administration, one of their 2010 or so, they came out with we're going to shut down every coal power plant in the United States by 2020. And us in the industry went like, you can't. Like the grid will collapse. If you start shutting these down, even in the next year or two, like the grid is going to collapse. Like we're not ready for it. You have to have all of this other stuff in place. And they walk that back because of those reasons. Where it started with, well, okay, you can get an extension if you do this and file this and tell why it's important. And they got that from everybody and said, okay, I guess we're canceling this plan because it turns out it doesn't work.
Well, and the thing is too, every project takes longer than people budget for the time. Everything, it's very rare to see any kind of project really get done. I mean, you look at the high-speed rail in California that's gone, like 5 miles in 15 years, and it's supposed to cover the whole state, kind of thing. So anyways, well, Mike, good show today. Folks, thanks for watching. We've had lots of people watching today. Always feel free to post in the comments, and we love taking questions and things like that. Otherwise, Mike will be back with us next Wednesday. All right.
Sounds good, David. Take care.
Thank you, Mike.